Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is frequently cited as the best piece of Star Trek fiction. Its tale of revenge and Moby Dick metaphors solidified the popularity of the franchise, leading to more movies and eventually additional well-beloved series, Vegas experiences, and mobile games. The success of the movie has a lot of factors, but one of them is the stellar and memorable performances of the three lead actors: William Shatner as Captain James T. Kirk, Leonard Nimoy as the pragmatic Spock, and Ricardo Montalban as the vengeful Khan. It will not surprise you, because I have telegraphed it so well, that these three actors have all faced off against Lieutenant Columbo, and they give some of the best performances in the show. Well, most of them do, and we're going to talk about them. From worst to best performances, here are the actors from Star Trek II encountering Columbo. Sometimes a detective can't stop detectiving, such as the time when Columbo won a free cruise and just couldn't help himself ruining Robert Vaughn's vacation just because Bob killed a singer on the ship. Sometimes Columbo is taking a weekend in Mexico and gets into a fender bender and gets scammed and blackmailed by the Mexican police to assist with a death involving a matador, and it's a bit of a slog. It does not help that the show treats the matador as some kind of unique class of person that cannot be understood by mortals. From the start, we see that Ricardo Montalban is already seething over some unknown shame, so shameful that his loyal assistant is packing his bags. He will be leaving immediately. Ricardo asks Hector to at least help him kill the bull that hurt Hector's son. It's the least he could do. He will eat the cost. Hector relents and goes to assist him, but Ricardo turns on him and tranquilizes him, then lets the bull loose and takes off. He conveniently gave all the workers a day off, so the corpse isn't found until later and written off as an accident by the corrupt, political-minded police officer. Columbo isn't having it, and pretty much has the whole thing sorted from the beginning. He just can't figure out why. So he gets permission to poke around. And poke around he does. The movie is mostly just him wandering around this estate, getting chased by a calf, taking a couple hours to read a book about bullfighters while he waits for his car to be released from the impound. All Ricardo does his stiff acting thing. I like it, it's fine, but it drags a bit, and there really aren't any good confrontations. He's just too genial and friendly, tight-lipped and living in shame over just the silliest thing. Columbo tricks him into getting back into the bull ring and discovers his terrible secret. He's scared of bulls now. He's lost his courage, and his toxic machismo requires him to take this fact to his grave, thus the murder. He immediately gives up, his ego completely shattered, while Columbo goes off about the evidence he found that he doesn't need. Not the greatest episode, it does not say very nice things about the Mexican people or government. Pretty insensitive. I do like the decision to not translate any Spanish we hear, because Columbo doesn't know how to speak Spanish. I don't speak Spanish either, but the dialogue they use is simple enough that I wasn't confused. But yeah, it's fine. Not great. Not once does Ricardo Montalban try to shoot someone with gruesomely burned hands. You've got to give it to Nimoy's traditional cadence. It makes for a pretty good murderous sociopath. He's good here, as an ambitious doctor who wants to get his drug on the market quickly and is being hamstrung by his senior advisor, who just happens to need heart surgery tonight. So our Spock doctor, Spockter, uses dissolving suture in the heart surgery, which will eventually fail and kill the older man so Spockter can accelerate the research and strike it rich. Just some real evil behavior, but the nurse is a good nurse and knows there's something off with the sutures and is going to go to the police about it. So he follows her to the parking garage and hits her with a crowbar. In for a penny, this guy has a real reign of terror as he casually ends people's lives because he needs to give Columbo a plausible story so the detective will leave him alone. Columbo spends the whole episode being uneasy because he's afraid of hospitals. He's very squeamish, don't you see? He doesn't like to see the body, except for all those times he doesn't seem to mind. It's hard to know how much is an act with Columbo. Spockter is cool as a cucumber throughout, even his outbursts feel planned. A tactic. He casually tosses the nurse's apartment and plants some drugs so the police will assume it was a general crime thing. Columbo isn't convinced though, because this nurse seemed like a real nice lady, very private, very determined, and also low-level criminals usually leave fingerprints on their illicit substances. They aren't wiping down their drugs they steal from the lab, and usually there's additional proof of a crime, like extra money, expensive habits, that kind of thing. Look how boring her apartment is. Things escalate when Spockter overdoses just some guy, so there's a plausible murderer, but Columbo is not having it. He doesn't buy any of this. He's pretty sure Spockter put a shitty suture in the doctor's heart, and if the doc does go belly up, he's going to perform an autopsy and find that suture. Well, now Spockter is going to have to get back in that heart and replace it. except Columbo is waiting. This is now a crime scene. He's going to search the entire theater and find that suture. Unfortunately, they don't find anything. They searched every square inch of that operating room, and there was no dissolving suture anywhere. Columbo still doesn't believe it, but he knows the rules, and he has to let him go. Then Spoctor finally lets out a breath of relief. And then Columbo swoops back in and congratulates him. He was very clever, but he neglected to get Columbo out of his apron, and he just found something in his pocket. Case closed. Show's over. Do not think about how this case gets through court. Nemo does a great job here. You could definitely feel all the tension while he's still managing to keep it together at all times. He's noticing all the details and following his little dark triad heart to make sure he gets, what, a big payout? Prestige? They do mention that people knows he's a grubby little weasel, not sure how he got all these people to come to his fancy party. Look at Leonard Nimoy pretending to have fun. Columbo is a real gremlin in this one, cracking his hard-boiled egg on the murder weapon, loading up on a plate at the fancy party. He didn't have lunch today. You understand. And then asks for an antacid after gorging himself, telling a monkey to take it easy.
Hey, take it easy, fella.
Nearly fainting watching a surgery, really hamming it up. An entertaining watch. This one starts with a very dapper William Shatner doing a parlor reveal until someone flubs their lines and we see we're on the set of a detective show. These are always fun when we're on the set of a TV show, especially a detective show. We always get an overconfident actor who has to interact with a detective, offering tips because he plays one on TV, so he knows how this works. Even better when we know the detective actor is the murderer from the start, so it's fun to watch his manipulation tactics. Not that it makes a ton of sense near the end when our murderer and the detective he plays on TV become two distinct people. Our murderer this time around is Ward Fowler, who came to fame due to the backstage dealings of his ex-lover, current producer Claire Daly, who effectively controls his career. He's sick of it, sick of the blackmail, so he concocts a plot by inviting his assistant over to watch the game, drugging him so he passes out, then holding Claire up at a sandwich shop and shooting her in the back when she realizes it's him and tries to leave. Then he heads back and uses the power of his VCR to trick his assistant into thinking he was asleep for only a few minutes. Pretty good alibi, not conclusive though. Columbo gets the story about the robbery from Chekhov, who I guess tagged along with Shatner, but doesn't believe it. He wanders into the shop while trying to find someone to talk to, and Ward puts on a real performance to show that he is shocked to hear this news. This whole thing somehow charms Columbo, who can't stop fawning over this guy. He loves the show, never misses an episode, and we spend the whole movie watching these two flirt with each other. Ward is using all sorts of diversion tactics to keep Columbo off tilt, very tsundere. Sometimes he's all smiles, eating up the flattery, and sometimes he's a viper with a short temper and scathing remarks.
You know Tony, sir, he's the one who...
If you tell me that one more time, I'm going to kill myself.
He's planted a thread from a sweater on the murder weapon and is just waiting for Columbo to reach the wrong conclusion. But Columbo is more interested in trying on his clothes and playing with Ward's state-of-the-art camcorder. What year did this come out again? 1976? Literally, what is this equipment? The camcorder did not come out until 1982, and this stuff cost $3,000? That's a lot of money. Pretty expensive to set up a flimsy alibi. Here's the part where it's not super clear if Ward Fowler is still sane.
Why would Claire Daly blackmail Ward Fowler? And how?
That's where I'm going to need your help, Lieutenant.
As he seems to be stuck playing Detective Lucerne, who wants to make sure that Columbo has really thought over this Ward Fowler character. Are you sure I didn't do it? This is some strategy, but it doesn't work at all because Columbo has already got the evidence. Fowler didn't wipe down the bullets, case closed. He concedes and asks Columbo to please stop fawning over him. Freeze frame. Shatner is really good in this, the right level of malicious and jovial, and his bizarre statements and mood shifts make him fascinating to watch. Plus, Columbo is having a really good time. He got to see the shark from Jaws at Universal Studios. It looks pretty bad. I'm pretty sure that's not actually the shark from Jaws. Shatner returns in the 90s, and if you don't know about 90s Columbo is an incredibly mixed bag. But I'm pretty sure this is one of the good ones, as we get Shatner as a successful AM radio host and journalist fielding chase. Kind of like a Rush Limbaugh. People know who Rush Limbaugh is, right? Now that I think about it, it's more like present-day Glenn Beck, but how could they have known about that? It is not like all conservative pundits have the same life trajectory, right? Anyway, this jackoff doesn't want to talk about Harry Truman.
But I want to talk about Harry Truman.
Well, I don't. Goodbye, Charlie.
and also doesn't want his foster daughter to leave his orbit, and her gay best friend Jerry is encouraging her to submit her manuscript to an agency and go to New York. Fielding can't have that, and spikes the pitch, which leads to a tense confrontation when Jerry calls him out on it and suggests he has other plans for his daughter, which is neither commented or acted on, so good, but also he's still weirdly protective of her. Poor Molly Hagan. If she had a nickel for every time she played a young, ambitious, but cynical lady being manipulated by a murderous creep who's bedeviled by Columbo, she'd be in that one meme. So Felding needs to kill a man, coming up with this wild plan where he tells Jerry to call him back at a very specific time the next day, which I would just not do. What an absurd request. He's clearly trying to set up a murder. Jerry dutifully calls back when Fielding sneaks into his house and picks up the phone in the next room so he could be talking to Jerry as he shoots him, and it gets recorded on his answering machine. Then he gets the hell out of there, leaving behind a misleading clue, and makes a call on his car phone once he is away. He then comes back and insists that he needs to speak to the lead detective. He heard everything on the phone. The detective is late, of course, and he's got a tight five about car phones that he's working on.
Guess where I'm calling from? Wrong. The car.
Then he hears that the rich person needs to speak to him, and it's clear he's already got it figured out. This man is clearly guilty. Look at his terrible mustache. But he still chases down the obvious red herring he was given, which involves once again wandering into the middle of a scene and ruining the shot. I love how they made it clip to being friendly and jovial once they realize he's a cop. Oh, it's fine, everyone. It's just an agent of the state here to question a coworker who's being unjustly targeted because he's a sexual minority. This is a good situation, actually. What fun. Columbo is back on the trail immediately, though, sussing out that this guy probably wasn't murdered by an ex-lover because you know how those homosexuals act. It's probably the homophobe that really wants the detective to know he has a solid alibi. He keeps getting into Felding's business, and he is sick of it pretty much immediately. Jovial but mean William Shatner is back, just casually insulting Columbo's cigar choices with such fury.
You burning ragweed in here, or did somebody die?
He's so mean. He really doesn't want to talk about his satellite dish. He's trying to exercise right now. Does this asshole have a funicular on his property? How much money does he have? Well, too much, because when you live out in the mountains, it can tear apart your alibi, because reception up here in the hills sucks, and there is no way he placed that 911 call out here. Felding takes a moment to consider just murdering him. It was a mistake to confront him with this without anyone around, except, surprise, it was all set up, the cops are here. Got you again, Shatner. It's like it's written that way. I remember putting together a top 10 because why not, and this ended up in the top slot, and sure, pretty solid. I enjoy Felding Chase as a murderer a lot, but I still think Dabney Coleman will always be my actual favorite. This one is stronger as a Columbo, good plot to unravel, good drama, and treats gay people as human beings, which is nice for 94. Sure, this one could be the best, that's fine with me. Argue with me if you want to. That's all the crossover between Columbo and Star Trek II I have for you. I don't have a surprise reveal that Kirstie Alley played a bit part in one of these, or that the woman who played Carol, Kirk's baby mama, played the journalist who got car exploded in a season 2 episode of Mrs. Columbo. Nothing like that. Just pointing at the screen whenever Spock walks by, really. Still, always fun to talk about Columbo. Look at this little guy. Anyway, speaking of mysteries that center around some dude making a call from his car phone, let me tell you about the Murder, She Wrote spinoff, because I neglected to mention it before. I was saving it for later, after I'd seen the show. Well, now I know about it, and so will you. Let's talk about Harry McGraw. Yowza, yowza.
Yowza, yowza. Yowza, yowza, yowza. Yowza, yowza. Yowza, yowza.